We live in a world that teaches us to announce everything. Every step, every struggle, every small victory is placed on display, measured by likes, comments, and validation. But somewhere along the way, we lost something precious. We lost the art of rebuilding ourselves quietly. We forgot that the most powerful changes often happen when no one is watching, when the heart speaks honestly to Allah, and when the soul is repaired away from noise. Rebuilding yourself in silence does not mean disappearing from life. It means returning to what is real. It means stepping away from distraction long enough to hear your own heart again. Because many of us are exhausted, not from doing too much, but from pretending we are fine when we are not. We smile outwardly while carrying wounds inwardly. We stay busy so we don't have to feel. Yet Allah does not heal what we hide from Him. He heals what we place sincerely in His hands. Silence is not weakness. Silence is clarity. It is the space where intentions are purified, and where faith is no longer a performance. When you rebuild in silence, you stop proving yourself to people and start repairing your relationship with Allah. You stop asking, "How do I look?" and begin asking, "Who am I becoming?" And that question changes everything. As we step into 2026, many will set loud goals and public resolutions. But some will choose a different path, a quieter path. A path where mornings begin with reflection, where mistakes lead to repentance instead of excuses, where growth happens slowly, deeply, sincerely. This is the kind of rebuilding that lasts. Not the kind that impresses people, but the kind that transforms hearts. Tonight is an invitation to stop announcing your healing and start living it. To stop explaining yourself to the world and start returning to Allah. Because when you rebuild yourself in silence, Allah rebuilds you with strength. And when He lifts you, you will not need to speak. Your peace will speak for you. True transformation begins in private, not in public applause. And this truth is uncomfortable for many of us, because we live in a time where growth is expected to be visible, announced, and validated. We have learned to measure our worth by how much attention our changes receive. If no one notices, we assume it doesn't count. If no one claps, we question whether the effort was meaningful at all. But the soul does not heal according to algorithms, and sincerity is not born under spotlights. Most real change starts quietly, often painfully, in moments no one else sees. It begins when you are alone with your thoughts, and you can no longer run from yourself. It begins when excuses stop working and distractions lose their power. In those moments, there is no audience to impress, no image to maintain. There is only you, your weaknesses, your regrets, your hopes, and Allah. And that is where transformation actually takes root. Public applause can motivate, but it can also corrupt intention. When growth becomes something to show rather than something to live, it slowly loses its depth. You start fixing the parts people can see while ignoring the parts that actually need healing. You adjust your behavior, but not your heart. You sound better, look better, appear stronger, yet inside, the same patterns remain untouched. Private work is different. It forces honesty. It removes the safety net of validation and leaves you face to face with truth. When you change in private, you are not performing. You are repairing. You are not trying to convince anyone of your progress. You are trying to save your own soul. You wake up earlier not because people will praise your discipline, but because your heart needs stillness. You walk away from certain habits, not because they damage your reputation, but because they damage your relationship with Allah. This kind of change is slower, quieter, and far more demanding, because there is no external reward to keep you going. In private transformation, motivation comes from sincerity. You keep going even when no one checks on you. You keep improving even when no one notices. You keep repenting even when you fall again. There is a humility in this process that reshapes the heart. It teaches you that your value was never meant to be negotiated with the world. It was always anchored in who you are before Allah, not in who you appear to be before people. Public applause is fleeting. Today they cheer, tomorrow they forget. Today they admire, tomorrow they criticize. If your growth depends on that, your stability will always be fragile. But when your transformation is built in private, it becomes rooted. It is no longer shaken by opinions, because it was never built for them. You are no longer living to be seen, you are living to be sincere. Private change also allows space for failure without shame. When no one is watching, you can fall, get up, and try again without the fear of judgment. You can admit weakness without explaining yourself. You can cry without translating your pain into something presentable. This is where healing breathes. This is where faith deepens, not as a concept, but as a lived reality that carries you through confusion and doubt. Many people want the results of transformation without the isolation that comes with it. They want strength without solitude, clarity without silence, and growth without discomfort. But the heart needs quiet to realign. Just as seeds grow underground before they ever break the surface, the soul also requires hidden seasons. No one applauds a seed while it is buried, yet that unseen phase determines everything that comes after. When you rebuild yourself privately, you also learn patience. You stop rushing the process for the sake of appearance. You allow Allah's timing to shape you, instead of forcing outcomes. You begin to trust that what is unseen by people is never unseen by Him. And that trust becomes a source of calm strength, one that does not need constant reassurance. True transformation is not loud. It does not announce itself every step of the way. It shows up in consistency, in restraint, in choices made when no one is there to reward you. It shows up in how you speak, when you could stay silent, and how you stay silent when you could speak. It lives in the moments where you choose integrity over attention, obedience over approval, depth over display. And slowly, without spectacle, without applause, without explanation, something shifts inside you. Your reactions soften. Your priorities change. Your heart becomes less restless. You no longer feel the urge to prove that you are growing, because you are too busy actually growing. Silence is where sincerity with Allah is rebuilt, because sincerity cannot survive in constant noise. When life is loud, intentions become mixed, prayers become rushed, and faith slowly turns into habit instead of presence. We speak, react, explain, defend, and consume so much that we rarely sit long enough to ask ourselves why we are doing what we are doing in the first place. Silence strips all of that away. It removes the background noise that distracts the heart and forces it to stand honestly before Allah. In silence, there is no performance. There is no one to impress, no image to maintain, no words to hide behind. It is just you and your Lord. And that is precisely why silence feels uncomfortable for many people. Because it exposes what has been neglected. It reveals prayers that have lost focus, repentance that has become mechanical, and intentions that have quietly shifted from Allah to people. Silence does not judge, but it does reveal. Sincerity is not rebuilt through long speeches or outward displays. It is rebuilt in moments when you lower your voice, slow your pace, and allow your heart to speak without filters. In silence, you begin to notice how often you do things to be seen rather than to be accepted by Allah. You realize how easily approval from people can creep into worship, how quickly good deeds can become a way to feel superior instead of humble. These realizations rarely come when life is noisy. They come when you finally stop running, when you sit in silence, even for a few moments. Your heart starts to surface with things you have buried. Regrets you never processed. Guilt you kept postponing. Longing you didn't know how to name. Silence gives those feelings room to breathe. And in that space, sincerity begins to form again, not as perfection, but as honesty. You stop pretending to be stronger than you are. You stop hiding your struggles in polished words. You simply turn to Allah as you are. Silence also teaches you how to listen, not just to yourself, but to Allah's guidance in your life. When everything is loud, we miss the subtle reminders, the quiet warnings, the gentle nudges toward what is better for us. In silence, you start recognizing patterns. You begin to see which choices bring peace and which drain it. You notice which relationships pull you closer to Allah and which quietly pull you away. This awareness is a form of mercy, and it grows only when the heart is not constantly distracted. Many people think sincerity means doing more, but often it means stripping away what is unnecessary. Silence helps you do that. It teaches you that not every thought needs to be spoken, not every emotion needs to be broadcast, and not every struggle needs an audience. Some things are meant to be carried privately to Allah. When you stop sharing everything with the world, you start sharing more honestly with Him. In silence, your dua changes. It becomes less rehearsed and more real. You stop trying to say the perfect words and start saying the true ones. Sometimes it's just a sigh. Sometimes it's a tear. Sometimes it's a quiet admission of weakness. And that is where sincerity lives, not in eloquence, but in truth. Allah does not need your words to be impressive. He needs your heart to be present. Silence also humbles the ego. When you are not constantly speaking or being heard, you begin to realize how much of your identity was tied to expression and reaction. You learn restraint. You learn to pause before responding. You learn that not every battle is yours to fight, and not every misunderstanding needs clarification. This restraint is not silence out of fear, but silence out of trust. Trust that Allah sees, knows, and will take care of what you leave to Him. As sincerity rebuilds in silence, worship starts to feel different. Not necessarily easier, but deeper. You feel more aware during prayer, more connected during remembrance, more reflective during moments of solitude. Even when you fall short, your repentance becomes quicker and softer, because your heart is no longer hardened by constant distraction. Silence creates sensitivity, and sensitivity brings the heart back to life. Over time, you begin to protect your silence. Not because you want to isolate yourself, but because you understand its value. You realize that every time you guard your quiet moments with Allah, you are guarding your sincerity. You become less interested in proving your faith and more invested in nurturing it. Less concerned with how you appear and more concerned with who you are becoming. And within that quiet space, sincerity continues to rebuild itself layer by layer, not as something fragile, but as something rooted deeply in a heart that has finally learned how to be still before its Creator. Healing does not need an audience, only honesty. Yet, so many of us have been conditioned to believe that pain must be witnessed to be valid. If our struggle is unseen, we fear it will be misunderstood or ignored. We explain ourselves repeatedly, hoping someone will finally understand what we are carrying. But in that constant explaining, something quiet and essential is lost. Healing begins to revolve around being acknowledged rather than being restored. Honesty is different from exposure. Honesty is inward before it is outward. It is the moment you admit to yourself that you are not okay, without softening the truth or decorating it with strength. It is allowing yourself to feel what you feel without rushing to justify it. Many people share their wounds before they have even acknowledged them privately. They speak about pain before they have sat with it, understood it, or placed it before Allah. And when healing becomes performative, it often stays shallow. True healing starts when you stop narrating your pain and start listening to it. In quiet moments without an audience, emotions surface in their raw form. Grief that was delayed, anger that was suppressed, disappointment that was never processed. These emotions do not need validation from people. They need recognition from you. When you are honest with yourself, you give your heart permission to begin repairing itself instead of constantly defending its wounds. An audience can unintentionally complicate healing. When others are watching, there is pressure to progress at a certain pace, to sound hopeful, to appear strong. You may feel guilty for still hurting or ashamed for not being over it yet. This pressure pushes people to rush healing, to cover wounds before they have closed. But honesty moves at its own pace. It does not follow timelines or expectations. It unfolds slowly, according to what the heart can bear. When healing is private, there is freedom to be inconsistent. Some days you feel lighter, other days the weight returns. Some days you feel close to Allah, other days you struggle to focus. Honesty allows room for this fluctuation. It accepts that healing is not linear. You can take 2 steps forward and 1 step back without feeling like you have failed. This acceptance is crucial because self-judgment often deepens wounds instead of closing them. Honesty also means acknowledging your role in your own pain. This is one of the hardest parts of healing, and it is nearly impossible to do honestly in front of others. In private, you can admit where you ignored red flags, where you stayed too long, where you compromised yourself, where you reacted instead of responded. This is not about blame, it is about clarity. Without clarity, healing remains incomplete. In honesty, you also confront the stories you tell yourself, the narratives that say you are unlovable, broken, or beyond repair. These beliefs often form quietly after repeated hurt, and they shape how you move through the world. When you are alone with your thoughts, these voices become louder. But that is not a threat, it is an invitation. An invitation to challenge them, to bring them to Allah, and to replace them with truth, instead of fear. Healing without an audience strengthens your reliance on Allah. When no one else knows the depth of your pain, you turn more sincerely to the one who always knows. Your dua becomes less formal and more desperate, less structured and more sincere. You speak to Allah without censoring your confusion or disappointment. You ask questions you were afraid to voice. This honesty deepens your connection, not because you have all the answers, but because you trust Allah enough to bring Him your unfinished heart. Privacy in healing also protects you from comparison. When you heal publicly, it is easy to measure your progress against others. Someone else seems to have moved on faster, forgiven easier, recovered stronger. This comparison can make you feel weak or delayed. Healing in private removes that pressure. Your journey becomes